Welcome to Spectrum News Within the Week, coming to you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State Capital. My name is Ofonono Joseph. Let's take a look at the top stories. Vice President Shettima arrives in Guinea for DOUMBOUYA'S inauguration. Rivers High Court temporarily halts Fubar's impeachment. Plus, Trump threatens new tariffs on countries opposed to Greenland takeover. Stay tuned for details of these stories and more in just a moment. Good afternoon and many thanks for joining us on the news within the week. We begin the news within the week from the national scene, where Vice President Kashim Shettima has arrived in Conakry, the Guinean capital, to represent President Bola Tinubu at the inauguration of President-elect Mamadi Doumbouya. According to a statement by Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Communications, Office of the Vice President, Stanley Nkwocha, Shettima was received on arrival by senior Guinean government officials and members of the Nigerian diplomatic corps ahead of the official ceremony scheduled for today at the GLC Stadium. Doumbouya's inauguration follows his victory in the December 2025 general elections, formally bringing to a close a four-year military transition and restoring constitutional governance in Guinea. Shettima's presence at the ceremony underscores Nigeria's leadership role within the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS, and its sustained commitment to democratic rule and political stability across the sub-region. The visit is also expected to serve as a strategic engagement to deepen bilateral ties and expand the economic corridor between Nigeria and Guinea, reinforcing cooperation in trade, investment and regional integration. Away from that, the federal government during the week inaugurated a 40 billion naira closed-circuit television CCTV control center for the third mainland bridge in Lagos. Speaking at the inauguration, Minister of Works David Umahi said the project followed extensive rehabilitation works carried out on the bridge after the current administration took office in 2023. Umahi said the CCTV system, first announced in 2025, was designed to curb dangerous driving, prevent suicide attempts, and strengthen security. He added that security personnel would monitor live footage from the control center and enforce speed limits on the bridge. According to him, the total rehabilitation of the bridge, including the replacement of expansion joints, was approved by President Bola Tinubu. He noted that the completed work had improved driving conditions and extended the bridge's lifespan. In the meantime, the federal government, states and local governments have shared 6 trillion naira Federation Account Allocation Committee FAC disbursements in the third quarter of last year. This was revealed in an analysis of the FAC Quarter 3 allocation released by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NEITI. Breakdown of the disbursements show that the federal government received a 2.19 trillion naira, states received 1.97 trillion naira, and local governments received 1.45 trillion naira. The statement in Abuja by the Director of Communication and Stakeholders Management, Obiajeli Onwara, described the allocation as a historic rise in Federation account receipts and distributions. Meanwhile, the federal government in the course of the week indicated that it has reached an agreement with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, aimed at strengthening industrial harmony and improving teaching and learning conditions across the nation's universities. The government said the agreement is also expected to support sustainable development within the Nigerian university system. Both parties are scheduled to sign the pact on Wednesday in Abuja. According to a statement issued by Aburiowo Folashade, Director of Press and Public Relations at the Federal Ministry of Education, the signing ceremony will be chaired by the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, alongside the Minister of State for Education, Professor Suwaiba Said Ahmad. The statement noted that the event marks a significant step in the government's ongoing efforts to establish a stable, productive and globally competitive higher education sector.
Sir, Alhaji Ali Ahmed, some of your committee members are destroying our universities. Research funding is not a luxury, but a necessity for any university that seeks relevance, excellence, and societal impact. A university without strong research funding risks becoming a mere teaching institution, disconnected from innovation, policy influence, and national development. Nigerian universities have faced paucity of research funding for a very long time, and I'm glad that research and development funding is a component of the 2025 ASU FGN renegotiated agreement. It was agreed that the National Research Council bill shall be forwarded to the National Assembly for consideration. The proposed bill shall provide for at least 1% equivalent of GDP as a source of funding for research, innovation, and development. It is my belief that as stakeholders, members of the National Assembly, distinguished senators, honorable member of the House of Representatives, that you return to.
We had a lot of difficult moments, but we also talk ourselves through. Professor Verona and the rest of the executive team, I really appreciate the kind of sterling leadership you brought to bear. I think it deserves a big round of applause. To get us to where Professor Pirona was the past president of ASU, Professor Emmanuel Osodike. Everybody knows the personality of Professor Osodike, but he's a man that does everything with meaning, with high level of passion, integrity, and he would always prove his point, but he will wait for the other side to say theirs. This is what leadership is all about. It needs a big round of applause to you and your executive team members. And I can't begin to name the several other members in ASU, but the few I can remember that we've sat in multiple meetings. Professor Nasser Fergie, thank you for your patriotism, for your work to this country, and for advancing the notion of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that our children must be in school. They must stay in school. Professor Biodun Odeyemi, and to our elder statement as well, Professor Asasi Asobe, you're here today. You should be sitting at home watching TV. This is how you labor, you push yourself to come to every meeting. This is what patriotism is all about. Thank you so much. I think let's give Professor Asari Asobe a big round of applause.
From the Red Chambers, the Senate within the week given an assurance that Nigeria is working assiduously to rebuild its reputation, perception on the global stage. Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Jibrin Barau, met the clarification during the official presentation of the first Nigeria Reputation Perception Index Report 2025, organized by the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations at the National Assembly Complex in Abuja. While describing national reputation as a strategic asset in an increasingly interconnected world, the lawmaker commended the development of a data-driven framework for assessing Nigeria's image across critical sectors. According to him, independent reports were essential for effective lawmaking and oversight. However, the Senate leader cautioned that reputation must be anchored on lived realities. He pledged legislative support for reforms that promote transparency, unity, and social justice. Now to the Green Chambers. The federal government during the week said that President Bola Tinubu's agricultural policies are now yielding positive results across the country. The Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Benjamin Kalu, made the remark while delivering the opening address at the General Assembly of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, held in Abuja. Kalu pointed out that the removal of fuel subsidies by President Tinubu in 2023 redirected billions of naira toward agricultural mechanization, input distribution, and rural infrastructure. He further stated that the declaration of a national state of emergency in food security, the formation of the Agricultural Promotion Policy (APP), the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative (PFI), and other key economic policies of the current administration are now demonstrating real results in its key zones. The Deputy Rep's leader, therefore, urged farmers across the country to drive an agricultural revolution through local processing and export-oriented production, which, according to him, would accelerate economic diversification. In a separate development, the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, in the course of the week said President Bola Tinubu is committed to ensuring that the armed forces and other security agencies are adequately equipped, properly motivated, and well cared for to enable them to discharge their constitutional responsibilities effectively and professionally. The minister said this at an interdenominational church service for the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day, AFCRD 2026 in Abuja. Also in attendance were the Chief of Defense Staff CDS, General Olufemi Oluyede, the Inspector General of Police IGP Kayode Egbetokun, and senior serving and retired military and police officers. The minister thanked President Tinubu for his unwavering support and commitment to the welfare of the troops and their families. Also, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, assured that the National Assembly, in collaboration with the executive, was committed and resolute in its effort to restore Nigeria as one of the most peaceful and secure nations in Africa. Elsewhere, the Chief of Defense Staff CDS General Olufemi Oluyede within the week assured President Bola Tinubu and Nigerians of the armed forces' commitment to defending the country's democratic values and ensuring peace and security. He also assured that the military high command would continue to foster a highly professional armed forces with a collective mindset geared toward meeting its constitutional responsibilities. General Oluyede gave the assurance in his goodwill message on the occasion of the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day 2026. The CDS said the armed forces, in collaboration with other security institutions and civil authorities and guided by the invaluable lessons of veterans, will navigate the various challenges to achieve lasting peace and security in the country. The defense chief also paid tribute to the fallen heroes whose sacrifices, he said, safeguard the unity and sovereignty of our great nation, noting that Remembrance Day served as a poignant reminder of the heavy price paid for the peace and liberty the country enjoys today. On electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, during the week said it is making early strategic preparations towards this year's off-cycle elections and next year's general election. The Commission reaffirmed its commitment to strengthening public confidence in the nation's electoral process. INEC Chairman Professor Joash Amukbiton announced this in Lagos at a leadership workshop organized by the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, IFES, for the leadership of the electoral umpire. Amukbitong, who described the workshop as timely, said the Commission was not a critical period of leadership transitioned marked by changes at the top and the retirement of several directors and senior management workers after years of distinguished service to the nation. On judicial matters, the Supreme Court yesterday dismissed the appeal of the son of a former Jigawa State governor challenging the decision of the trial court, which convicted him for failing to declare $40,000 at an airport. In a unanimous decision, the panel at the Apex Court dismissed the appeal of Aminu Sule Lamido, the son of former Governor Sule Lamido, for lack of merit. Recall that operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) arrested Aminu on December 11, 2012 at the Malam Aminu Kano International Airport while preparing to travel to Cairo, Egypt. The prosecution said Aminu declared $10,000 to the Nigeria Customs Service NCS, but was found with an additional $40,000, which was not disclosed on his currency declaration form. In Rivers State, a high court sitting in Oyibo local government area has stepped into the escalating political crisis in the state, issuing an interim injunction that temporarily halts further action on the impeachment process against Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his deputy Ngozi Odu. In a ruling delivered in Port Harcourt, the court restrained the Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, Martin Ameuli, alongside 32 other defendants, including the clerk of the House and the Chief Judge of Rivers State, from taking steps aimed at advancing the impeachment process. Specifically, the order barred the Chief Judge, Justice Simeon Chibuzo Amadi, from receiving, forwarding, considering or acting on any request, resolution or impeachment-related document from the Assembly for the purpose of constituting an investigative panel, pending the determination of the matter. The injunction is to subsist for 7 days. The order was granted by Justice Florence Fiberasima following the hearing of a motion ex parte filed separately by Governor Fubara and his deputy. In the two suits, the court also granted the claimants leave to serve the interim order and other originating processes on the first to the 31st defendants by pasting them at the gate of the Rivers State Assembly quarters. The court also directed that the Chief Judge listed as the 32nd defendant be served through any staff of the judiciary at his chambers within the court premises. Moving forward, the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, within the week confirmed the release of 52 youths, including students of Ambrose Ali University, AAU, Egboma, Edo State, arrested on Monday for taking part in a protest over security matters in the community. In a statement signed by Comrade Oladoja Olushola, the national president the association said, after profiling those arrested, he found out that 38 were students of AAU and the remaining 14 youths from the community. It added that it took steps to also get non-students among the detained persons released too because of the connection between the youths and the students. In education, the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, during the week announced that it will allocate 6.452 billion naira to 271 tertiary institutions under this year's intervention cycle. The money, the agency said, is meant to strengthen critical physical infrastructure and enhance academic programs. It is also expected to boost research and innovation, as well as drive overall transformation in the tertiary education sector. Recall that President Bola Tinubu had approved the disbursement guidelines. According to the guidelines, the funds will be released directly to over 271 beneficiary institutions across the country. TEDFund's Executive Secretary Sonny Echono gave the details in Abuja during a strategic stakeholders meeting with heads of beneficiary institutions on the 2026 disbursement guidelines. Still to come in the news, Nigeria's inflation eases to 15.15% in December 2025. Stay tuned for details of these stories and more when we return from the short break. Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us. Now let's continue with the rest of our news stories. We move now to Africa, where Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has taken a commanding lead in Thursday's presidential election, well ahead of his main challenger, Bobi Wine, whose party has already questioned the credibility of the results. Figures so far give Museveni 75% of the vote, with Wine on 21%, based on returns from 70% of polling stations. Wine's party said on social media that a helicopter had landed in the grounds of his house in the capital, Kampala, and forcibly taken him away to an unknown destination. Meanwhile, local police told reporters they were not aware of the incident. Elsewhere, the United Nations yesterday warned that food aid in Sudan is at risk of running out by the end of March unless urgent new funding is secured, threatening millions in what is already the world's largest hunger crisis. The World Food Programme's Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response, Russ Smith, said the agency has already been forced to cut rations to the absolute minimum for survival and warned that without immediate support, millions could lose access to life-saving assistance within weeks. According to the UN, more than 21 million people, nearly half of Sudan's population, are now facing acute food insecurity. Adding that famine has been confirmed in El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, and in Kadugli in neighboring Kordofan, both heavily affected by fighting. Reports say after nearly 3 years of civil war between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, humanitarian conditions have deteriorated sharply. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and around 11 million displaced by the fighting. Still in Africa, as Madagascar continues its political transition after the ouster of the previous government, it is strengthening cooperation with Russia. According to the Malagasy presidency on Wednesday, Moscow is supplying military equipment to the Indian Ocean nation and has sent a delegation to train armed forces in its use. The training will cover different types of equipment. Various military units based in the capital, Antananarivo, will take part. The presidency said it is willing to work with all countries, but said historically, Madagascar has sourced its military equipment from Russia. On the foreign scene, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to place tariffs on nations that do not go along with his ambitions to annex Greenland. Trump said this at a White House meeting, which is a self-governing territory controlled by Denmark. Reports say Denmark, Greenland, and other countries have opposed his plans, and many in the U.S. have expressed skepticism about an acquisition. Recall that Trump has said Greenland is vital for U.S. security, and Washington will get it the easy way or the hard way. Elsewhere, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney within the week met Chinese leader Xi Jinping in Beijing as they announced a new strategic partnership. Among key concessions, the two leaders have agreed that China will lower tariffs on Canadian canola seed, while Canada will allow 49,000 Chinese EVs into its market. Carney's visit comes after almost a decade of strained ties between Ottawa and Beijing. Meanwhile, President Xi said there has been a turnaround of ties between China and Canada since both leaders met at a summit in November last year. In the meantime, UK Finance Minister Rachel Reeves during the week confirmed that the UK no longer plans to make a new digital ID card mandatory to work in Britain. The clampdown follows an intense backlash to contentious plans to introduce a free digital ID for both nationals and those residing in the country in a bid to curb illegal migration. After officials briefed British media late Tuesday that the new ID would no longer be mandatory over employment, Reeves insisted the right to work would still become contingent on providing a form of digital verification. The mandatory digital ID policy unveiled by Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer in September had sparked fierce opposition from rival political parties and public concern. Still on the foreign scene, a South Korean judge sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol yesterday to 5 years in prison for obstructing justice and other crimes linked to his disastrous martial law declaration and in its chaotic aftermath. It is the first in a series of verdicts for the disgraced ex-leader, whose brief suspension of civilian rule in South Korea on December 3, 2024 prompted massive protests and a showdown in parliament. Now ousted from power, he faces multiple trials for actions taken during that debacle and in the turmoil that followed. The judge, Baek Da-young, at Seoul Central District Court said he found Yoon guilty of obstruction of justice by blocking investigators from detaining him. Yoon was also found guilty of excluding cabinet members from a martial law planning meeting. Talking business, World Bank in the course of the week urged governments to revamp public works programs, saying short-term jobs are no longer enough to address unemployment and skills gaps. In its report, Innovations in Public Works, Rethinking Public Works for Jobs and Skills in a Changing World, the lender said traditional schemes, which often provide temporary, low-skilled infrastructure work, fail to offer lasting economic benefits or pathways into stable employment. It added that public works should be designed not only to provide short-term relief, but also to help participants build skills that are relevant to growing sectors of the economy. Elsewhere, Nigeria's headline inflation rate eased to 15.15% in December 2025. Capping a year marked by slowing price pressures and early signs of stabilization across key sectors of the economy. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, attributed the December figures in part to a review of the Consumer Price Index CPI methodology aimed at better reflecting current economic realities. Data released by the NBS showed the CPI rose to 131.2 in December from 130.5 in November, indicating a moderation in the pace of price increases across the economy. On a month-on-month basis, inflation eased to 0.54%, down from 1.22% in November, signaling a reduction in the general price level. Still talking business, Dangote Petroleum Refinery yesterday said it has achieved daily offtake of 50 million liters of premium motor spirit PMS, marking a major milestone for Nigeria's downstream petroleum sector. The refinery says it is now delivering 50 million litres of petrol daily, positioning Nigeria closer to energy self-sufficiency and global fuel standards. The newly appointed Managing Director, David Bird, cited seamless fuel supply during the Christmas and New Year holidays as evidence of growing operational stability. He explained that while demand fluctuates, particularly on weekends, the refinery remains confident it can sustain volumes and export surplus when necessary. Still to come in the news. CAF names Moroccan referee for Egypt vs Nigeria third-place match. Stay tuned for details of these stories and more when we're back from this break. Welcome back and thank you so much for staying tuned. Now let's conclude on the rest of our news stories. On our business news, I beg your pardon, in health, the World Health Organization, WHO, within the week, called on governments to significantly increase taxes on sugary drinks and alcohol to save lives. WHO warns that beverages like sugary drinks and alcohol are too accessible and cost too little in most of the world, helping fuel obesity, diabetes, cancer, and injury. It added that sodas or carbonated canned drinks, high sugar products such as 100% fruit juices, sweetened milk drinks, and ready-to-drink coffees and teas escape taxation. The organization, however, noted that alcohol has become more affordable or remained unchanged in price in most countries since 2022, as taxes don't get adjusted for inflation and income growth. In the meantime, the Joint Health Sector Unions and Assembly of Healthcare Professionals, JOHESU, during the week insisted on continuing its indefinite national strike in spite of the federal government's no work, no pay policy. This is contained in a memo signed by the National Secretary of the Union, Martin Ogbanubi, and addressed to presidents, general secretaries, and state chairmen of affiliate unions in Abuja. According to the union, the decision follows resolutions reached by its national leadership at an emergency virtual meeting to review developments surrounding the industrial action. Recall that the federal government recently directed the implementation of the no work, no pay policy and stoppage of JOHESU members' salaries through the Accountant General of the Federation's office. The strike, JOHESU said, stemmed from its long-standing demand for the implementation of the adjusted Consolidated Health Salary Structure, CONES, and other welfare-related issues. Still in health, to ensure the availability of safe blood in its blood banks, the Lagos State government yesterday renewed efforts to strengthen voluntary blood donation and close existing supply gaps with the target of collecting 250,000 units of blood annually. The Lagos State Blood Transfusion Service disclosed this during its 2026 Blood Donor Mobilizer Stakeholders Engagement. The Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, said Lagos, with an estimated population of 30 million, requires between 200,000 and 250,000 units of blood annually. He stated that about 141,000 units, only 70% of the target, were collected in the last cycle, commending residents who voluntarily donated to save lives. We move now to sports, where the Confederation of African Football (CAF) has appointed Moroccan Jalal Jade as the referee for Nigeria's third-place playoff against Egypt in the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations (AFCON). CAF announced Jade's appointment on Friday. The Moroccan will be assisted by his compatriots Zakaria Brinsi and Arkadad Mustafa. According to CAF, the assistant referee 3 is Hassani Khalil from Tunisia, while the fourth official is Peter Kamaku from Kenya. Algeria's Lalou Benbrahim will be the video assistant referee VAR and will be assisted by Haytham Gourat from Tunisia and Hamza El Farg, Morocco. Meanwhile, the referee assessor is Zinko Zeli of Côte d'Ivoire. Nigeria will take on Egypt today by 5 p.m. local time. In the meantime, Super Eagles head coach Eric Schell yesterday said his team will fight hard to secure third position at the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. Recall that Nigeria finished second at the previous edition of the AFCON hosted by Côte d'Ivoire. Schell said his team cannot afford to go back home empty-handed this time around. Meanwhile, the Malian has been credited for the Super Eagles' impressive display in Morocco. Still talking sports, Chelsea on Friday confirmed that young defender Olutayo Suboloye has signed a new contract with the club that will see him remain at Stamford Bridge until at least 2030. Suboloye joined Chelsea's academy at the under-12s level from Brighton and Hove Albion. He captained Chelsea's under-16s in the 2023-2024 Premier League National Final and later became a regular for the club's under-18s. The defender also gained further experience with Chelsea's under-21s in the Premier League 2 and EFL Trophy. This is coming ahead of Chelsea's Premier League tie with Brentford today. Talking entertainment, Afrobeat superstar Davido had revealed that his father, Dr. Adedeji Adeleke, forced him to undergo a DNA test amid a paternity claim by a 12-year-old girl, Anu. In a recent tweet, Davido stated that the Adelekes prioritized bloodline, highlighting the family's emphasis on heritage and clarity. Reports say Anu and her mother, Ayo Labinjo, have publicly claimed that Davido is the girl's father and have requested a DNA test to establish her identity. However, Davido has denied being Anu's father, citing 5 negative DNA tests conducted at reputable hospitals. Elsewhere, Grammy Award-winning musician Damini Ogulu, popularly known as Burna Boy, will headline the final of the Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Fan Zone concert in Rabat, Morocco. This was confirmed in a post via X by the Confederation of African Football (CAF). The body also shared posters of the artists billed to perform. The 2025 Africa Cup of Nations began on December 21, 2025 with music featuring in-tournament events. The opening ceremony in Rabat featured Nigerian star David Adeleke, popularly known as Davido, alongside French Montana and Redon. Their performance, titled Le Show, took place shortly before Morocco's opening match against Comoros at the Prince Moulay Abdellah Stadium. Lastly, in the news within the week, Africa Magic, organizers of the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards, AMVCA, has officially opened the call for entries for the 12th edition of the Continental Film Awards. Entry submission for the award ceremony was opened on Sunday, January 11, and will be closed on Sunday, February 15, 2026. Filmmakers and content creators across the continent have been urged to submit their work for consideration. And that's all we have for you at this time. Kindly follow us on all our social media handles and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News within the week. My name is Ofonono Joseph. Good afternoon and happy weekend.